Hello and welcome from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next 30 minutes, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak sacks his Home Minister Suella Braverman, replacing her with Foreign Secretary James Cleverly and giving his job to former PM David Cameron. India's Commerce Minister to attend two key trade-related meetings of the IPEF and the Apec in San Francisco and hold multiple engagements on the sidelines. And the Indian Air Force is displaying its Made in India prowess at the mega Dubai Airshow. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has sacked Home Secretary Suella Braverman after a series of controversies. Braverman's removal comes days after she defied Sunak by publishing an article attacking the Metropolitan Police. Her action was alleged as a breach of the ministerial code. Downing Street said it had not signed off on the article and she had previously been criticized for language used on issues around migration and homelessness. It's part of a wider reshuffle of Rishi Sunak's cabinet, which sees James Cleverly become the new Home Secretary.
Well, it's been a huge privilege to serve as Foreign Secretary, and in that time I worked very closely with my colleagues in the Home Office, cracking down on illegal migration, reducing the number of small boat arrivals, and now as the Home Secretary I'm absolutely committed to stopping the boats as we promised, but also making sure that everybody in the UK feels safe and secure.
And former British Prime Minister David Cameron has been named as the country's new Foreign Minister. 57-year-old Cameron served as British Prime Minister from 2010 to 2016, resigning after the outcome of the Brexit referendum when Britain voted to leave the European Union. His unexpected return to the front line of British politics comes after he spent the last 7 years writing his memoirs and involving himself in business, including Greensill Capital, a finance firm which later collapsed. Sunak's office said on Monday that King Charles had approved giving Cameron a seat in Britain's upper chamber, the House of Lords, allowing him to return to government as a minister despite no longer being an elected member of Parliament. Let's now take you straight across to London. DD India's Ollie Barrett joins us from there. Hello, Ollie. Again, now Suella Braverman sacking has triggered a reshuffle of Rishi Sunak's cabinet. First, why has it happened? And we know some of the reasons, really, they were pretty evident in the last few days. And James Cleverly gets her job. And Cameron, an ex-PM, has been rehabilitated, brought back from political wilderness after 7 years.
Yeah, Gautam, in terms of the timing, we knew that Rishi Sunak was going to carry out a cabinet reshuffle at some point before the next election to try and get his top team in place, ready to go to fight that election whenever he decides to call it. But part of the reason that today seems to be the day that he's gone for is, I think, related to some of those controversies around Suella Braverman, the outgoing Home Secretary that you have mentioned there. The controversy particularly related to comments around homelessness. She described some people who are homeless as having made a lifestyle choice. That was very controversial indeed. We know that those comments upset Rishi Sunak and his Downing Street administration, and then those controversies around the policing of the pro-Palestinian marches in London at the weekend. That also, and the article she wrote about that, was something that again upset Downing Street, and Rishi Sunak clearly came to the view that it was time to move Suella Braverman on, and therefore time also to make that wider reshuffle, bringing David Cameron into that Foreign Secretary role in that surprise move, which means, just as one illustration of how these things work, that the meetings we expected to be held in London this week between Foreign Secretary Secretary James Cleverly and the Indian External Affairs Minister Dr Shanker will now be held, we expect, between David Cameron and the External Affairs Minister. So all of these changes having an impact domestically but also internationally as well.
No, definitely. Now, what will be the repercussions of these upheavals in the Tories' camp with elections just a little over a year away?
It will be very interesting indeed to watch, and part of the answer to that question depends on Suella Braverman herself. She has only put out a very brief statement after moving on from the position of Home Secretary, after being asked to leave the government, saying that it was the privilege of a lifetime to serve in that position, and she says she will say more in the coming days or weeks, and that potentially is a bit of a threat to the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. She could well be a loud voice of opposition on the backbenches for the right wing of the Conservative Party. The Conservatives are a divided party at the moment, and if Suella Braverman decides to be outspoken in opposition to some policies of Rishi Sunak's government and his leadership, that could be potentially very tricky indeed for him. Now, there are others in the Conservative Party who will say it was the right time to move Suella Braverman on, and that it's the right decision to bring David Cameron back into government in that role at the Foreign Office. There are others on the other side of that coin who will say, look, they don't believe that David Cameron's foreign policy was particularly a strength of his. They will point to what they see as David Cameron having taken the wrong position on issues like China, for example. There are many in the Conservative Party who feel that David Cameron got his China policy wrong when he was in government. So that is a controversial appointment too. But the Conservatives, as I say, are really trying to put together a team that they feel can fight the next election and win it, despite the fact they are miles behind the opposition Labour Party in the polls at the moment.
Oh yes, almost 20% percentage points behind, and I guess the gap will even widen further going by the way the things stand. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Ollie Barrett. Now, External Affairs Minister Dr Shanker has said that India is the fastest growing large economy today, noting that there is a leadership vision and good governance. Dr Shanker said this during an interaction with the Indian community in London. The minister also praised the contributions of the community in raising India's profile around the world. The foreign minister, who is on a 5-day visit to the UK, celebrated Diwali by offering prayers at the Babs Sri Swaminarayan Temple in London on Sunday.
So, I want to assure you, things are going very well at home. You can see that in the manner in which we had a very, very successful G20 presidency in very difficult circumstances. The world did not believe that we could get everybody together. And it took a Prime Minister like Narendra Modi to do that. Similarly, we have come through a very difficult period like the entire world has on COVID. But India is today the fastest growing large economy, and there is a very good reason. It is growing because today there is leadership, there is vision, there is good governance.
And during his visit to the UK, Dr Shanker met Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in London on Sunday and conveyed the best wishes of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Diwali. Dr Shanker is in the United Kingdom on an official trip to review various aspects of bilateral ties and to hold meetings with his counterpart, coming into office, UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron and several other dignitaries. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal will attend the Apec Economic Leaders Summit in San Francisco. India has been invited to the 30th Apec Economic Leaders meeting as a guest economy. Piyush Goyal will also attend the ministerial meeting of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, that's the IPEF, in San Francisco. During his 4-day visit to the US, Piyush Goyal will interact with industry leaders, prominent academics and US officials to further strengthen economic and commercial ties between the two countries. The Commerce Minister will also hold bilateral meetings with US Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo US Trade Representative Catherine Tai and ministers of other IPEF partner countries on the sidelines of the IPEF ministerial meeting. These meetings will focus on addressing trade barriers, promoting investment and greater cooperation in areas such as technology and innovation. Also, the stage is set in San Francisco for the biggest international event the city has hosted since 1945. Leaders from across the Asia-Pacific are flying in for the Apec summit that President Joe Biden is hosting this week. DD India's Simon Marks is at the summit site in San Francisco.
India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal will represent Prime Minister Narendra Modi at this year's APEC summit here in San Francisco, the first APEC summit to be held on American soil since 2011. The agenda is absolutely vast, and over the course of the last few hours here in San Francisco, fresh pressure has been applied on both President Biden, the host of the summit, and Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of their meeting face-to-face on the sidelines of this event on Wednesday. It took fully a year for Washington and Beijing to negotiate even the possibility of a face-to-face meeting between the two men. So tense has the bilateral relationship between Washington and Beijing been, especially in the months since the United States shot down that Chinese surveillance balloon flying in American airspace. On Wednesday, it comes at a time, of course, when President Biden will be traveling to this APEC summit to reinforce the notion that the United States sees itself as a Pacific power and is absolutely determined to deepen its partnership with its partners across the Indo-Pacific in a bid to try and counter China's expansionist tendencies. Other issues where there may be difficulties making headway include the crisis underway in the Gaza Strip. There is disagreement among many of the countries attending this APEC summit over precisely who is to blame for the intensifying crisis in the Middle East. Many of APEC's 21 member states want the United States to liberalize its approach to trade, to allow market access, even perhaps to agree to begin the negotiation of free trade agreements. The Biden administration does not appear to be coming to this summit with that kind of an approach in mind. 78 years ago has San Francisco seen an international gathering like this. The city has cleaned up in the immediate vicinity around the Moscone Center where this summit is being held. Big stakes here, a big event, and of course enormous outcomes banking on it that will come out of this conference for nations throughout the Indo-Pacific. Simon Marks for DD India at the APEC summit in San Francisco.
And Indonesia's President Joko Widodo is set to hold a bilateral meeting with US President Joe Biden later on Monday. The talks will aim to deepen trade ties between the two nations, but issues including China and the situation in Gaza will also likely feature prominently. Our US correspondent has this report from New York.
According to a statement from the White House, Joe Biden and Joko Widodo's discussions will focus on deepening the partnership between the world's second and third largest democracies. The White House adds a little bit more information on what the two leaders will be discussing, including cooperation on clean energy transitions, advancing economic prosperity, and ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. Can also expect the issue of China to dominate much of the conversations, likely, according to analysts here from Indonesia's leader, calling for the US and China to cool tensions. This comes just a few days before President Joe Biden is expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in San Francisco in just a few days' time. Economics will likely feature very prominently in this bilateral meeting between the leaders of the US and Indonesia. Some analysts saying we might expect a limited free trade agreement. Much of the focus will be on market access to critical minerals, especially nickel produced by Indonesia, that could play a pivotal role when it comes to easing US supply chain issues as it looks to ramp up the production of electric vehicles in the future. The issue of Gaza will likely also be in focus and will likely be discussed. Joko Widodo has described the humanitarian situation in Gaza as unacceptable. Joe Biden, the US president, has been pushing for more humanitarian pauses to see a more humanitarian access into the Palestinian enclave. But, of course, the United States has historically been a staunch ally of Israel. William Denslow in New York reporting for DD India.
The US conducted airstrikes against two Iran-linked sites in eastern Syria in response to attacks against American forces in Syria and in Iraq. The response from the US forces marked the third time in recent weeks that they carried out strikes against facilities used by Iranian proxies. In a statement, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the strikes targeted a training facility near the city of Al-Bukamal and a safe house near the city of Mayadeen. The US military conducted airstrikes against a weapons storage facility and an ammunition storage area in Syria on the 28th of last month and conducted subsequent airstrikes against a weapons storage facility on the 8th of this month. South Korea and the United States have revised a bilateral security agreement. South Korea's Defense Minister Shin Won-sik and his US counterpart Lloyd Austin signed the updated agreement at the security talks in Seoul. The tailored deterrence strategy aims at countering North Korea's nuclear weapons and other arms. The revision was considered necessary as the existing strategy is not addressing rapid advancements in North Korea's missile programs. North Korea called for the United Nations Command to be dissolved, calling it an illegal war organization, over a meeting which is scheduled to take place between the UNC member states in South Korea later this week. The US-led UNC is a multinational military force and oversees affairs in the heavily fortified demilitarized zone between the two Koreas, which remain technically at war. Russia has claimed that multiple strikes were carried out on Ukrainian military targets, including ammunition and fuel depots, several artillery and armored vehicles. These also included intercepting 2 HIMARS rockets and dozens of drones. On the other hand, Ukrainian forces launched several attacks on Russian troops, as well as their military equipment and ammunition depots. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also warned his country persons against renewed Russian attacks on infrastructure as winter approaches. A Malaysian policeman convicted of the murder of a Mongolian woman has walked free from detention in Australia, where he had been held for nearly 9 years. His release comes just days after a landmark ruling by Australia's High Court that outlawed indefinite immigration detention, leading to the release of dozens of asylum seekers. Argentinian presidential candidates Javier Milei and Sergio Massa debated in a heated TV face-off ahead of the 19th of November elections. The presidential hopefuls traded accusations and questioned each other, showcasing their opposite proposals and viewpoints on topics that included the economy, foreign affairs, security and human rights. A Philippine court on Monday granted bail to a former senator and fierce critic of former President Rodrigo Duterte after nearly 7 years in jail on charges she always denied. Leila de Lima faced various charges in 2017 within months of launching a Senate inquiry into Duterte's brutal anti-narcotics campaign, in which thousands of users and dealers were killed by the police or under mysterious circumstances. Up to 1 million people in Somalia are facing devastating impacts of intense rains and flooding, as the El Niño global weather phenomenon has wreaked havoc in East Africa. Displaced individuals are grappling with the challenge of finding suitable shelter, while damaged or inadequate transport infrastructure is hindering the delivery of vital aid and supplies by national and international agencies. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live, the Nepalese government has decided to ban Chinese video sharing app TikTok, citing negative impact on social harmony. Sri Lanka's president, as its finance minister has presented its annual budget, says the economy is not out of its crisis yet. And the International Cricket Council has added India's Virendra Sehwag and Diana Edulji, along with Sri Lanka's Aravinda de Silva, to its Hall of Fame.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, EU foreign ministers have met in Brussels on Monday. The meeting was called upon to discuss the situation in Gaza and how to keep the bloc's focus on Ukraine, given the crisis in the Middle East. Earlier on Sunday, the European Union condemned Hamas for using hospitals and civilians as human shields in Gaza, while also urging Israel to show maximum restraint to protect civilians. Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe
We condemn the use of Hamas as hospitals and people as human shields, and on the other hand we ask Israel for maximum restraint and targeting in order to avoid human casualties.
Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is also the island nation's finance minister, presented the annual budget for 2024 in Parliament on Monday. Wickremesinghe called for upliftment of the country and the casting aside of political differences for this purpose. The president said Sri Lanka's public debt as a percentage of GDP is expected to be reduced from 128% in 2022 to 95% in 2032 under the debt restructuring support given by the International Monetary Fund. President Wickremesinghe said Sri Lanka has increased its foreign reserves to $3.5 billion. Sri Lanka is going for presidential elections next year.
Our country's situation is now better than it was before 1 year. I am not saying that the economy has completely recovered. It has become comparatively better. We have attained that position by facing difficulties, making sacrifices, and enduring various hardships. We can certainly create a more favorable economic environment in the near future if we gradually move forward in this difficult terrain. When we look back the past year, it is 100% confirmed that we are on the right track.
In a recent development, Nepal's government has decided to ban the Chinese short-form video app TikTok. The decision was made during a cabinet meeting held on Monday, citing the app's adverse impact on social harmony and its tendency of encouraging hate speech in society. The specific date for the implementation of this ban is yet to be determined. It should be noted that the short video sharing app had already been banned by India back in 2020. A Russian Pacific Fleet squadron has called at Chattogram port of Bangladesh for the first time after 50 years. The Embassy of Russia in Bangladesh shared on X and formerly Twitter, and I quote, "The Russian Pacific Fleet squadron is visiting the Chattogram port, which is a huge milestone for Russia-Bangladesh relations," end quote. The last time Russia's or Soviet naval ships visited Bangladesh was 50 years ago, said the embassy. The Pacific Fleet Squadron comprises the large anti-submarine warfare ships Admiral Tribats and Admiral Pantaleyev and the oceanic tanker Pachenga, according to Russian state news agency TASS. India's capital city of New Delhi is all set to host the biggest ever international trade fair at the newly redeveloped Pragati Maidan complex. Thousands of participants from several countries are likely to visit Delhi for the mega event. DD India's Dibendu Modal has this report. The 18th edition of the Dubai Airshow, titled The Future of the Aerospace Industry, began today at Dubai World Central. The event, which is the largest to date, will host over 1,400 exhibitors from 95 countries. The event will feature over 180 commercial aircraft, including Airbus's A320P2F, A321neo and A330neo as well, A400M Atlas CMK-1, H225 helicopter and C295. The event will also feature the latest electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, drones as well as UAVs. It will also feature the UAE Space Agency's latest initiatives and advancements in sustainable aviation fuel and cleaner aviation technology. And time now to get some sporting updates as well. The International Cricket Council has announced 3 new additions to the ICC Hall of Fame on Monday, with legendary opener Virendra Sehwag, India's trailblazer Tiana Adulji and Sri Lankan superstar Aravinda De Silva being the latest inductees. One of the most destructive batters of the modern era, Virendra Sehwag joins the ICC Cricket Hall of Fame with a record that is unable to be matched by many. The 3 legends will be honoured during the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup semi-final between India and New Zealand at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai the day after.
The International Cricket Council on Monday announced the cricketers inducted into the ICC Hall of Fame as the class of 2023. Former ICC ODI World Cup winners Aravinda De Silva and Virendra Sehwag have been inducted as part of class of 2023, along with pioneering Indian women's cricketer Diana Adulji. De Silva, Adulji and Sehwag will join as inductees number 110, 111 and 112. De Silva enjoyed a 19-year international career for Sri Lanka, notably playing a starring role in their memorable run to victory at the ICC Cricket Men's World Cup in 1996. Upon his induction, De Silva said, "This achievement is a tribute to the dedication, sacrifice and love that have shaped my cricketing journey. My family, my parents, my sister, my wife and children are my anchor and deserve the deepest thanks for their unwavering support and sacrifice which have propelled me towards success." Adulji becomes the first Indian female inducted into the ICC Hall of Fame. She had a 17-year-old long international playing career and played pioneering role in establishing the most successful domestic team in Indian women's cricket history. Adulji said, "It indeed is a great honour to be the first Indian women's cricketer to be inducted and join a galaxy of cricketers, male and female, from across the world. I am delighted to be considered for this award. It is not only a proud moment for me, my family and friends, but also for BCCI and Indian women's cricket team." Sehwag was also a pivotal figure in the World Cup winning campaign for India back in the year 2011, and his record-breaking career spanned for 14 years and over 17,000 runs in international cricket. Sehwag said, "I would like to thank the ICC and the jury for inducting me with this honour. I feel extremely grateful for having spent a great part of my life doing what I loved most, hitting the cricket ball." Sehwag scored a total 23 Test centuries during his illustrious career, the 5th most by an India men's player, with his highest score of 319 against South Africa in Chennai in 2008, the best of any Indian player ever. Sehwag totaled 8,273 runs for India in 50-over cricket, and his 219 against the West Indies in Indore in 2011 remains the 3rd highest score achieved by any men's player at ODI level. Sports Desk, DD India.
And that's all we have for the moment in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. For all the latest, keep watching DD India.